What if I told you that you're not just tired, but experiencing several of the 10 symptoms of mental fatigue without realizing it? Stop for a moment and answer honestly. When was the last time you woke up truly rested, with mental clarity, sharp concentration, and stable emotional energy? If the answer took a while to come, perhaps this video is more important than you think. Because the truth no one tells you is simple and uncomfortable at the same time. You may be functioning at the edge of mental exhaustion and calling it a normal routine. Maybe you are sleeping the right hours. Maybe you are fulfilling your responsibilities, delivering results, maintaining your productivity. Maybe no one around you notices anything different, but inside, something changed. The concentration is no longer the same. Motivation fluctuates. The stress seems constant. The mind doesn't slow down even at night, and you begin to feel subtle signs of mental overload, such as frequent irritation, difficulty focusing, procrastination, and that persistent feeling of a tired mind. Today, I want to help you identify the 10 symptoms of mental fatigue before they evolve into anxiety, insomnia, decreased performance, or emotional exhaustion. And more than that, I want to show you what to do to alleviate mental fatigue in a practical and realistic way. But first, we need to talk about something that almost no one realizes. Mental fatigue has become a standard. Let's look at your day honestly. You wake up and before you even get out of bed, you pick up your cell phone. Notifications, news, accumulated messages, social networks, silent comparisons. Your brain already wakes up in a state of alert, activating stress and stimuli even before breakfast. This is already a trigger for cognitive fatigue. Throughout the day, you face an almost automatic sequence of decisions, problems, responsibilities, multitasking, and pressure for productivity. Every choice consumes mental energy. Each interruption fragments your attention. Each internal charge increases the psychological overload. And when night comes, you take a deep breath and say, "It was just a busy day." But maybe it wasn't just a busy day. Maybe it was another day accumulating symptoms of mental exhaustion, another day fueling emotional exhaustion, another day ignoring clear signs that your mind needs a break. Mental fatigue does not appear as a sudden breakdown. It infiltrates silently. Don't scream. Whisper. It appears between one task and another, between one notification and another, between one goal and another. The most dangerous thing is that you learn to function like this. You learn to concentrate with difficulty and call it normal distraction. You learn to sleep poorly and call it a phase. You learn to live irritated and call it work stress. You learn to work tired and call it responsibility. Little by little, the symptoms of mental fatigue disguise themselves as maturity and adulthood. But let me ask you something important. Do you ever wake up with a heavy mind, as if the day started in the middle of a run? Do you feel like your mental clarity has diminished? What small decisions require more effort than before? If this is happening, don't ignore it. Recognizing the signs is the first step to relieving mental fatigue and regaining your energy. If you have identified yourself so far, write in the comments, "I feel this." When you put it into words, you start to become aware. And awareness is the beginning of change. Because in the next moment, I'm going to show you the clearest signs that your mind has gone overboard. Symptoms that seem normal but aren't. And you might be surprised to realize how many of them are already part of your routine. Now I want you to stay with me with full attention, because what comes next may change the way you view your own mental fatigue. But first, let me ask you something simple and very important. If this content has already started to make sense to you, write the word "present" here in the comments. This helps me know that you are actually reflecting on the symptoms of mental fatigue and not just watching them automatically. When you interact, you come out of passive mode and start taking control of your mental health. And there's one more thing that makes all the difference. When you leave a like, you are not just supporting the channel. You are helping this video about mental fatigue, emotional overload, difficulty concentrating, and insomnia reach other people who are also living on the edge, but haven't realized it yet. The algorithm understands that this subject is relevant, e saúde mental precisa deixar de ser tabu e virar prioridade. So if you believe that more people need to understand the 10 symptoms of mental fatigue and what to do to alleviate it, before it turns into something bigger, click like now. And if you haven't signed up yet, now is the time. Because here we talk about healthy productivity, recovery of mental energy, how to reduce silent stress, improve focus, sleep better, and slow down the modern mind without having to abandon your responsibilities. If you want to learn practical strategies to alleviate mental overload and regain your clarity, subscribe and turn on notifications. This way you don't miss the next content that will delve deeper into this mental recovery process. Now pay attention to what I'm going to show you next. Many people believe that they are just a little tired, when in fact they are already showing several classic symptoms of accumulated mental exhaustion. And the most worrying thing is that these signs are mistaken for normal routine. You keep functioning, keep working, keep solving everything, but the quality of your concentration decreases, your memory starts to fail, your irritation increases, your motivation fluctuates. Maybe you've already noticed that you're procrastinating more, or that small tasks seem heavier than they should be. Maybe you feel like your mind never completely switches off, not even in moments of rest. This is not a lack of discipline. This is cognitive overload. It's your brain asking for stimulus reduction, real breaks, and mental reorganization. And in the next section, I'll detail specific signs, behaviors, and sensations that seem harmless, but clearly reveal that your mental energy is being drained daily. I want you to honestly observe yourself as you listen, because recognizing these symptoms is the first step to relieving mental fatigue in a conscious and sustainable way. Now, I don't want you to think about theory, technical diagnosis, or complicated terms about mental health. I want you to think about your real routine, your average day, that day that seems like all the others, because that's exactly where the signs of mental fatigue appear silently. They don't emerge as a dramatic collapse. They come in small details that you learn to normalize. You open a text to read. It could be an email, a report, an important message. You start reading, and when you reach the end of the paragraph, you realize that you haven't absorbed anything. Come back, read it again, and again. The words enter, but they don't stay. Concentration fails. The mind seems fragmented, as if it has several tabs open at the same time. This is not a lack of capacity. This is difficulty focusing caused by cognitive overload. It is one of the most common symptoms of mental fatigue. At another time of the day, you need to make simple decisions. Choosing what to answer, which task to do first, what to eat, what time to set. And something that used to take seconds now seems to require a disproportionate amount of effort. Small decisions seem too big. This happens because your mental energy is already being consumed by excess stimuli, excess responsibilities, and constant pressure for productivity. His patience also diminished. Sounds that were previously neutral are now annoying. Simple questions feel like giant interruptions. You answer shorter, harsher, and then you feel guilty. Frequent irritation is a clear sign of accumulated mental exhaustion. When the brain is overworked, it reduces stress tolerance. Everything seems more intense, heavier, more urgent than it really is. You start tasks and don't finish them. You open a project, interrupt to respond to a message, then remember another task. Switch activities, partially return to the first, and end the day with the feeling that you were busy the whole time, but completed almost nothing. This false productivity is typical of an exhausted mind. Constant multitasking is not efficiency. It is often a reflection of mental disorganization caused by cognitive fatigue. And even when you work all day, meet deadlines, and deliver results, that strange feeling arises that you haven't made enough progress, as if nothing was really satisfying, as if your productivity was always below expectations. This saps your motivation. You do a lot but feel little progress. This discrepancy between effort and sense of accomplishment is an important sign of emotional exhaustion. When night comes, the body is tired, the eyes are heavy, muscles ask for rest, but the mind doesn't stop. Repetitive thoughts, imaginary dialogues, future worries, mental to-do lists. You lie down to sleep and notice that your brain continues to accelerate. Sometimes you even sleep, but wake up feeling like you haven't rested. Insomnia isn't always about staying up all night. It's often sleeping without recovering mental energy. Forgetfulness begins to appear in a subtle way. Simple commitments go unnoticed. You walk into a room and forget what you went to do. You need to rely more and more on reminders and notes. Impaired memory does not mean disability. It means your mind is prioritizing surviving excess stimuli instead of storing quality information. And perhaps one of the quietest signs is guilt when resting. When a free moment finally arises, instead of relaxing, you feel like you should be producing more. It feels wrong to stop. It seems unproductive to slow down. High-performance culture makes you believe that rest is a waste of time. But a mind that never goes into recovery mode progressively accumulates mental fatigue. Do you see how all this can be happening while you continue to function? This is the most dangerous point. You still work, you still take care of the house, you still solve problems. And because it's working, you ignore the symptoms of mental fatigue. You think it's just a phase, just temporary stress, just physical tiredness. But running exhausted comes at a price. It appears in the quality of sleep, the drop in concentration, the increasing procrastination, the constant irritation, the reduction of motivation, and your emotional health. The mind was not made to live in a state of continuous alert. When you maintain high levels of silent stress for a long time, your nervous system remains activated, and it drains your mental energy every day. You begin to live in survival mode, reacting, resolving, responding, but rarely truly reflecting or resting. I want you to observe honestly. How many of these signs are already part of your routine? How many times have you justified your difficulty concentrating as a common distraction? How many times have insomnia been called agitated mind, as if it were something normal? How many times have you ignored irritation, forgetfulness, procrastination, and the constant feeling of mental overload? If 3 or more of these signs look familiar, that's no coincidence. It could be a clear picture of accumulated mental fatigue. And recognizing this is not weakness, it's emotional maturity, it's self-awareness. Now I want you to tell me, honestly, which of these signs represents you the most today? Difficulty focusing, mind racing at night, frequent irritation, the feeling of always being mentally behind. Write the phrase, "I'm at my limit" in the comments if you realize that several of these symptoms are part of your life. Or just comment on the word that most defines your current state: exhausted, overwhelmed, or dispersed. I read the comments, and this exchange is important because when you verbalize, you begin to break the automatic cycle. And next time, we'll delve even deeper into what's really behind this mental exhaustion and why simply resting doesn't solve the problem. And now we come to the part that almost no one explains clearly when talking about mental fatigue, emotional exhaustion, and cognitive overload. Most people repeat the same superficial recommendation: sleep more, rest on the weekend, take a vacation. But the truth is that mental fatigue cannot be resolved simply by sleeping more hours. You can sleep 8 hours, you can even spend more time in bed, and still wake up with a heavy mind, with difficulty concentrating, with that feeling of drained mental energy before the day even begins. This happens because the problem is not just physical sleep. The problem is too much stimulus, too much decision-making, too much internal and external pressure. The modern mind never truly rests. Even when the body stops, the brain continues to process notifications, concerns, comparisons, goals, and pending issues. You're not just tired, you're overstimulated. And constant stimulation generates mental overload. It overloads your attention, your memory, your ability to focus, your emotional regulation. Therefore, alleviating mental fatigue requires strategic lifestyle adjustments, not just more hours of sleep. The first fundamental change is to reduce unnecessary decisions. It may seem simple, but think about it. Over the course of a single day, you make dozens, sometimes hundreds of small decisions. What to wear, what to respond, what task to do first, what message to prioritize, what to watch, what to post, what to buy, what to eat. Every choice consumes mental energy. This is called cognitive load. When you don't organize these decisions, your mental clarity decreases throughout the day. You start out focused and end up scattered, irritated and mentally exhausted. Simplifying is a powerful way to alleviate mental fatigue. Planning outfits the night before reduces micro-decisions in the morning. Organizing tasks at the beginning of the day reduces the feeling of mental chaos. Setting clear priorities prevents disorganized multitasking that drains your concentration. Creating fixed routines automates parts of your life, preserving mental energy for what really matters. Fewer unnecessary decisions mean more focus, more emotional stability, and less psychological stress. The second change is to create real breaks. And here is an essential point. Pause is not scroll the feed. Pausing is not swapping one screen for another. True pause means reducing stimuli. It's giving the brain space to get out of constant alert mode. 3 minutes of deep breathing will begin to regulate the nervous system. A walk without a cell phone, without a podcast, without mentally solving problems, allows your mind to slow down. Spending a few minutes in silence, looking out the window, may seem unproductive, but it is extremely effective in reorganizing thoughts. If you don't create intentional breaks, your body creates symptoms. Difficulty concentrating, frequent irritation, insomnia, procrastination, and even forgetfulness. are ways for the brain to signal that it needs recovery. The mind was not made to process information without delay. She needs to alternate between focus and rest. This natural rhythm was broken by the culture of hyperconnectivity and constant high performance. Regaining this balance is essential to alleviate accumulated mental fatigue. The third change is perhaps the most challenging: redefining productivity. Modern culture glorifies being busy all the time. If you're not producing, it feels like you're falling behind. But high performance without recovery leads to collapse. It is not sustainable to always operate at maximum. Not every day needs to be an extreme performance day. Not every goal is urgent. Not every task needs to be optimized to the limit. Being productive is not about being busy all the time. It's about being strategic with your mental energy. It's understanding that focus requires pause, that performance requires recovery, that clarity requires silence. Resting is not weakness, it is emotional intelligence. It's recognizing that your cognitive energy is finite. When you learn to respect your mental limits, your productivity becomes more consistent and less exhausting. Now I want you to reflect honestly. Which of these changes seems most difficult for you today? Reduce stimuli, create real breaks, reduce unnecessary decisions, or accept that you don't need to perform at your peak all the time. Be honest with yourself. Resistance often reveals exactly where the excess internal demand is. Write here in the comments the phrase that most connects with what you are experiencing now. It might be, "I need breaks," if you notice that your mind never slows down. It could be, "My mind doesn't rest," if the biggest problem is insomnia and racing thoughts. Or it could be, "I want to be more sustainable," if you feel like you need to change your relationship with productivity and performance. When you write, you make a silent commitment to yourself. And in the next section, we will transform these changes into a practical plan, applicable even today, to start recovering your mental energy in a consistent and non-radical way. If you've come this far, pay attention to this. It wasn't by chance. At some point in the video, you recognized yourself. At some point, you thought, "This is exactly what is happening to me." And when that happens, it's no coincidence. It's awareness awakening. Some part of you knows you need to slow down. You know that mental fatigue is not a frivolity. It is not a lack of strength. It is not an incapacity. Your mind is not weak. She is overwhelmed. There is a huge difference between weakness and overstimulation, between lack of discipline and cognitive exhaustion. And the sooner you understand this, the sooner the recovery of your mental energy begins. But let me tell you something important. Overload cannot be resolved with guilt. It can't be resolved by charging more. It cannot be resolved by trying to produce even more to compensate for tiredness. It is resolved with awareness, adjustment of habits, clear limits, and a new relationship with productivity and rest. If this video made sense to you, if at some point you felt understood, then leave a like now. The like is simple, but it makes this content about mental health, sleep, silent anxiety, and healthy productivity reach more people who are exhausted and think this is normal. You help the algorithm understand that talking about mental fatigue is important. And if you want to continue learning how to improve your concentration, reduce mental overload, sleep better, and regain your clarity every day, subscribe to the channel now. Because here we talk about the modern mind, excess stimuli, regulation of the nervous system, recovery of mental energy, focus, emotional balance, and practical strategies to live more lightly without abandoning your responsibilities. This is a space for those who want to be productive in a sustainable way, not at the expense of their own health. Now I want to know who really stayed until the end. If you've watched this far, comment on the phrase, "I choose to take care of my mind." This sentence is a commitment. It's a turning point. And if you identify deeply, you can also comment, "My mind deserves rest." I read the comments and want to acknowledge that who is determined to change. And before you leave, it does one thing for you. Click on the next video that appears on the screen. He will go even deeper into this process of recovering from mental fatigue and show you how to apply all of this in practice, step by step. See you there, and this time with more awareness, more balance, and a much lighter mind.